Joe Budden tells his co-host to stay home after telling them they could do the show when he was gone.
Participating members of this broadcast, we're taking off on Wednesday.
Quick to back down. Thank you. You was standing strong. You was out there on the balcony talking hot shit to me, yo. I don't care because I'm at this.
Flip. That's right, y'all. On a recent episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden completely switched what he had told the co-host before. If you don't know, Joe Budden's going on vacation for his birthday, and he had told members of the podcast, you guys could record in my absence. But for some strange reason, he told them they had the day off. Now, why did he do this? Especially after he told the whole cast, you could record when I'm gone. And also, Queen's Flip was the one that pointed out that Joe Budden had completely changed upon what he said. Now, this also unpacks a lot of things. One is, does Joe Budden trust his cast members to host the show in his absence? This is a question we have to ask, as the summer was a tough time for the Joe Budden podcast. I mean, Joe has admitted that, a lot of things were going wrong.
Everybody had something to do in July. Flip had just got back from suspension. Maybe when Mel had going on, then Ish takes a vacation, and then maybe there was a lot happening in July. So it's tough to get a rhythm, especially when the topics go dry, and there'd be a lot going on. So I got to stop and think about it no matter what's going on in life. Everybody don't have to do that.
Melissa Ford, I believe, had some type of issue. I don't even think there was any type of real drama. I just think she was tired of being on the show, so she needed a break and said, I need to take the show off, Joe. I'm in dire straits. And then Flip was not, suspended too long ago. That was before the summer, so there's been drama all year. And Ish took a vacation, so a lot was going on. And I don't know, you guys. This is something of note. It's something of interest. And I believe we have to keep an eye on this because in prior times, especially as of late, Joe Budden seemed to trust the cast with doing the show without him. And what would happen is Flip would be the A mic, right? This is why I think Flip was a bit turned off by Joe saying, oh, it was vacation time. You can't come into the studio because we're taking the day off. Flip wanted to do the show by himself. We all know Flip loves to be the A mic. Hell, even when he's on the show, he's still trying to be the A mic, cutting people off, taking whole storylines and all of this stuff and introducing narratives and making people feel uncomfortable. That's the stuff that A mic does. That's the stuff that is usually reserved for Joe. But then Flip, when he got on the show, he started doing that. So it's an interesting dynamic, and one that we need to monitor is, I think the idea Joe has for 2025 is that he's going to build a network and he's going to be in the background a bit more. But how is that going to happen if when he goes on vacation, he tells everybody, hey, you guys could come to the studio and do your thing. You guys could completely record. And then he switches course and is like, no, you guys have the day off. Now, the rest of the cast, Ish, Ice, Melissa Ford, Parks, they're completely happy that that's happening, but they don't understand what that's communicating. They're just happy to take the day off. When your boss tells you, hey, you could take the day off, I don't care, it's fine. After they tell you you could come into work, that's a red flag. That means something's going on. I know a lot of you are going to be like, Danny, you reaching again. Danny, you bugging. Danny, you doing this and that. I can't believe it. But no, it's something that Joe completely changed his stance on. And I think it's something we need to monitor. Because heading into 2025, there's a bunch of changes that are going to occur. Especially around that December. I think December is when Flip and Melissa Ford, back in the day, like a couple years ago, started to join the podcast. You start to see them come around. And that was after being introduced to the show earlier in the year, and there's been a couple folks who have been introduced into the show earlier this year. Ray Daniels, Mark Lamont Hill. It's only a matter of time before people start getting added, shows start getting fleshed out, and things start to occur. But let me know what you think. Why do you think Joe completely switched what he said about them doing the show without him to telling them to take the day off? Do you feel like it was for morale? I don't know. I think there's a lot more going on. All right, y'all. I also wanted to talk about this right here. I did a Patreon episode where I broke down why Stop the King isn't happening, and I'm going to put a clip of that here. But just to give you the short of it, it was just a lot going on. I want to be a think piece channel, and I think the podcast thing is cool, but it also is kind of a lot of work, a lot of back end stuff. And I was like, I can't be as fleet footed as I used to be. And I think Shammy also wanted to stop doing it towards the end because maybe he saw my energy towards the podcast was waning. But it's only going to be a clip. For the full episode, you're going to have to subscribe to the Patreon. It's only $3, and there's also a ton of other content. Now, I know a lot of people are like, Danny, why are you doing a paywall? Well, to be honest, a lot of the content that I've paid for is stuff I've paid for. Like, you know, like I book Mandy Studio, which isn't cheap. It's $330 every time I book it for 2 hours. And on top of that, I also have booked Wheezy Studio. That one costs more because I think the files and its pre-established business model. It's not easy to podcast in New York City. We all know New York City costs a lot. That goes for podcasting. They charge you for everything you do. You want to change the furniture. Oh, that's a fee. You want that? You want it sent through Dropbox? Oh, that's a $70 fee. So I kept the Patreon as low as possible. And I think I've been putting good content on it for a real good amount of time. There's a back catalog for people who haven't, seen the rest of it. So I think it's worth it if you want to see the full details about why Stop the King is over. But like I said, it was largely due to the logistics of podcasting that was starting to eat away at the think pieces like this that I really, really enjoy making. And on top of that, you can see that podcast numbers are falling for a lot of people. They're in the dirt. They're not doing too well. And I think the narrative, the think pieces is really what matters. You know, there's a lot of people out there, and people have 5 podcasts that they're basically going to listen to. And at this point, it's going to be really hard to crack. And for small content creators, you're not really going to crack them unless you're providing short bits of information, which is what I believe this channel's future is. There'll still be podcasts. Maybe occasionally when I have to do something on a situation or something happens to me, I'll talk about it. But that's not going to be a consistent theme. The narratives, documentary style YouTube videos are what I'm going for. I'm going to invest the money I've been using for podcast. Instead of giving it to Mandy or Wheezy, I'm going to be giving it to editors. I'm going to be giving it to people who can help me write stories. And I think that's a much better path for this channel than sitting down every week and talking about stories and all that stuff. The quality has to rise, and I don't think the quality was really that high with the podcast I was making. I just think it wasn't my thing. All right, y'all. Here's the Patreon clip. Please subscribe to the channel if you can. If you can't, I understand. $3 is a lot. No hard feelings. I'm not one of those guys that get offended. All right, this is Danny from The Stop. Stay tuned for the Patreon clip. All right, welcome to an episode that I've been trying to make for a little bit. We're going to talk about the end of Stop the King. So, Absurd's here, and we wanted to have a discussion about the end of Stop the King, or I wanted to have a Stop the King discussion because everybody's like, where's Stop the King, Daddy? Where's Shabby? And a lot of things occurred, but Stop the King is no longer around. Stop the King is a podcast me and Shammy started about a month ago, and it's over. It's over. 4 episodes in. 4th is on Patreon. 4th episode was pretty good too. We did it at Dub Studio. Shout out to Dubs. I think he's building his studio We're back at Mandy's studio, and that's another thing I'm gonna have to talk about. It's just the idea of starting a podcast and how much work it is, man. A podcast is a lot of work. I'm sure the people who I do content about and criticize like podcast is they're gonna be laughing, or they're gonna be like, "Oh, look at Daddy, his podcast was not able to last long." But I will say that I think it's much better to end a podcast early than have it go on too long. So I'm not above things ending faster than later, because when something lasts too long, the consequences can be very ill and the bad blood can steam to high levels. But Absurd, welcome to the show. I felt like I didn't need to introduce you because you had done podcasts with me before. But what up, Absurd? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Danny? Thank you again for letting me join the show. Again, y'all can follow Talk FNF TV. But no, man, Danny, we got to get into this, man, because I saw the forecast of this coming. You and I have been talking on the back channels. You know, I've kind of been a confidant, if you will, in regards to some of your business implements with Shammy. But we got to just break this down.
We got to break it down. Now, when you say you saw this coming, I don't even want to talk about maybe the back channel discussions. What did you see coming as far as the journey of Stop the King from episode 1 to episode 4, which was the end?
Well, I know first and foremost, you are a solo act. You really don't want too many people around, not too many cooks in the kitchen. That's just kind of how an individual that I've seen you to be so far. So I could just see in regards to this. And then I just looked at a little bit of the numbers. So I looked at our, that episode when we did, I think we did pretty good. And I looked at the show with Danny, and it just, the numbers didn't seem like they were numbering. And I could just assume that, like for you to know that this looks like it's just more of my own people engaging, and Shammy's not potentially bringing in any outside reviews, it just didn't seem worth it at the end of the day with you. But I would love to hear, your side of everything to go into this.
Well, I will say the numbers were not where I thought they would be, but they still perform pretty well. Like, there's podcasts out there that aren't cracking 10K with their clips or their actual full episodes, and we were doing that for the most part. There was some clips hovering around 7K, which isn't bad. I mean, you look at channels with 1 million subscribers, some of the content they make doesn't crack 4. But
oh no, for sure.
Yeah, but I did kind of think, I don't know if the juice was worth the squeeze. So how this starts, we need to start this whole thing back to look forward. And what's going on here is, a few months ago, Shammy reaches out along with his business partner, Dupree. They want to do Stop the King. Now, the reason they want to do Stop the King is, I think, as a result of the content me and Shammy made on the Patreon and also on the Stop YouTube channel, where we interviewed for about an hour and a half, and it was pretty good. I thought it was a good interview. We gained insight into why Shammy and Flip are no longer speaking, because remember, Flip is the one that cut Shammy off for whatever reason, but it's not even a suspect. Shammy and Flip fell out because they were doing not Stop the King. What was this? Better Call King? And then it changed. Yeah, and then it changed to Talk to the King. And it was obvious that some of the stuff that was going on was the disagreements between Flip and the manager, Dupree. That was the third party that I think was causing a issue. So they call me, they reach out, they want to do that after that interview. And we start to talk about Stop the King. We start to talk about the philosophy of the show, the idea of a straight-laced, some would say uptight man like me, younger than Shammy, with a man like Shammy who is a live wire. You never know where he's going to take the conversation. He might talk about his bathroom habits. He might talk about his party habits in the 80s. And we were going to marry those two brands together, and we were going to see the fun that happens. And fun did happen, but the business of podcasting would stop that. And that is essentially what occurred. So I'm going to go episode by episode. Episode 1 happens. It was fine. It was great. We were looking to the future. Episode 2 happens. And that's when I started to my energy started to go a little bit down. I'm not a high energy individual. I like to keep my energy base level so that way I can be in for the long haul. And what I noticed was Space was on the show. Space is like the furniture of podcasting. He's like these walls. He's like this TV behind me. He's something that's there but doesn't ever really stick out, but it's kind of needed in some sense. So he was the guest, and he was a conversation we needed to have because he was involved with Math Hoffa. Math Hoffa and him fell out. He was involved with Flip. Flip and Space fell out. Space is on the show, and that's fine because he was supposed to be on the show. No worries. But then Heineken, he joins the show, and he just bursts into Mandy's studio.
What the hell? Heineken! Why you ain't bring them girls with you?
Oh my God!
You should have brought the girls with you.
Yo.
Yes.
Get in the cameras.
I know. Say yes.
The cameras are here.
I know.
Heineken has just walked in, very chest
fresh to death.
Leader of This Is 50.
Got the black cats on. Leader of This Is 50.
And I thought, wow, for the first time, I'm exposed. Not during the thing, but if you see me, I kind of think live, like, how is Heineken able to just walk in here? How is he able to just come here? Does he think, what if he was here on bad intentions? Was he what? Which he wasn't. But he just shows up, and I think, I'm exposed. This is no longer something that I only can control. I'm adding variables to it that I no longer feel comfortable with. And Shammy says that it wasn't planned between him and Space. But I do think, like, even if it wasn't planned, Space may not even care about the situation. It's just really, as long as Shammy's okay, forget Danny. And that's that. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at, episode 2.
So how did he reveal that information to you? Did you ask him and then he said that, or how did that information get revealed?
Well, it was revealed live during the podcast. Shammy tells Space, like, don't you think it's wrong to invite someone without letting anyone know?
Did you feel like that was, let's be honest, did you feel like, were you trusting that? Did you feel like that was authentic? Did you feel like that was a move?
I think that was authentic. It could have been a way to get better content, like just have Heineken appear out of nowhere. But I still looked at it weird. I still looked at it as if, like, if there weren't any other parties involved but myself, that could never have happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, do you feel like there was like a potential lineup that was about to happen? Like, is that what going through your mind at first?
I did not think Heineken was there to beat me up or anything. I didn't think that. I did think there was a content lineup. You know, like when you have somebody just join and it's like, oh, we're going to have more bodies in the room to disagree with this person.
Okay.
I did that. So after that, I'm thinking about it a little bit different. The numbers are okay. Not anything better than my numbers with the think pieces or me and you's content episode where we're cracking 10,000. But then before episode 3, something occurs where I was on Spaces and I see Flip's on Space and he's talking about how he's going to slap me. Regular stuff. This is what Flip does. But then he says he's in communication with Shammy. And I think to myself, oh, okay. Because I had thought Shammy and Flip fell out. Wouldn't be surprised if the reason they're speaking again is because of the show that launched. Shout out to Stop the King for getting Shammy and Flip back cool. Because if you look at the first episode I did, Shammy made it clear that Flip was kind of ignoring his calls or not speaking to him. And they basically were having communications. Flip reaches out to Flip is a good manipulator. He tells Shammy, I'm going to slap Daddy and you better not get involved because then you're something disrespecting me. I don't know. It was something along those lines. And then Shammy says something that I found very interesting. He says,